Paris before dawn, Friday, October 13th, 1307. The city is still asleep, the air is cold, wet, heavy. A pale mist clings to the stone streets, swallowing the sound of footsteps. Then, movement. All across Paris, at the exact same moment, doors are forced open. Boots strike the floor. Steel flashes in candlelight. Elite warriors wake up choking on terror. Not on the battlefield, not under siege, but in their own beds. Hands pin their arms down. Cold blades press against their throats. Men who have faced death in the deserts of the Holy Land now freeze in silence, afraid to breathe. These are not criminals. They are Knights, Templars, men trained since youth to kill without hesitation, men who swore never to fear death, and yet this time they do not reach for their swords, because this enemy wears the king's seal. Outside, wagons wait, chains rattle. Orders are read aloud with shaking voices. No explanations, no resistance, only confusion. Across the city, the same scene repeats itself. Temple houses, commanderies, fortified halls, a perfectly synchronized operation. By sunrise, the most feared military order in Europe no longer exists. No battle, no warning, no chance to fight back, just silence. And here lies the question that still terrifies historians. How does the most powerful military force on earth disappear in a single night? Not defeated in war, not crushed by invasion, but erased by paperwork, by whispers, by betrayal. Because what happened that night was not justice, it was an execution, planned in the shadows. This is not a story about faith. It is a story about power and what men are willing to do when they want it all. The masters of the world, they didn't start this way. No gold, no palaces, no power, just 9 men, bare feet, tattered cloaks. They swore vows of poverty. They slept on stone floors. They owned nothing. At least, that was the story. 2 centuries later, the truth was unrecognizable. The Knights Templar didn't just fight wars, they financed them. They built something no one had ever seen before, a system. A man could hand over his gold in London, receive a coded document, and reclaim his fortune in Jerusalem. No theft, no bandits, no risk. The first check, the first international bank. And it worked. Soon, kings were lining up, not to command them, but to borrow from them. The Templars stored royal treasuries, managed taxes, funded crusades. They moved money across borders like ghosts, invisible, untouchable. They owned land across Europe and the Holy Land, castles, farms, ports. They controlled islands, entire fleets, private armies loyal to no crown. They were monks in theory. In practice, they were the first multinational corporation on Earth. And like every corporation that grows too powerful, they became a threat. A king in debt is a dangerous thing, because debt flips the balance of power. When a king owes you money, he is no longer your master, he is your prisoner. And the Templars held the chains. They could buy influence. They could silence enemies. They could make wars happen or end them, not with swords, with ledgers, with ink, with numbers scratched onto parchment. No taxes, no oversight, no king above them, only the Pope. And even Rome feared them, because everyone knew the same truth. You do not touch the Templars, you do not challenge them, you do not cross them, until one man decided to do exactly that. And when he moved fast, because the higher the power, the more violent the fall. The architect of destruction. He was called the Fair, Philip IV of France, but there was nothing warm about him, no fire, no passion, no mercy. Contemporaries described him as a statue, cold, silent, unmoving, a man who listened more than he spoke and remembered everything. Philip ruled a kingdom drowning in debt. Wars had emptied his coffers, lavish courts bled gold, failed campaigns crushed his treasury, and every road led to the same name, the Templars. They held his money, they financed his crown, they owned his future, and Philip hated that, because a king who owes money is not a king. But Philip was not reckless. He didn't rage. He calculated. And behind his frozen eyes stood another man, Guillaume de Nogaret, lawyer, strategist, destroyer of enemies. Nogaret had no faith, no loyalty, only ambition. He had already humiliated a pope, dragged him from his throne. Now, he saw something bigger, a legal execution. The problem was simple. You cannot kill saints, you must turn them into monsters first, and that's when the whispers began. From a broken knight, a bitter man, Esquin de Floiron, a disgraced Templar with nothing left to lose. He leaned in close and spoke poison, secret rituals, obscene kisses, idols worshipped in darkness, lies, or truths twisted just enough to matter. Nogaret listened. He sharpened every word, filed every accusation, not as rumors, as evidence. This was not an arrest, it was a coup. Every letter written in advance, every seal prepared, every command synchronized, months of planning. Absolute silence. Even the Pope was kept in the dark. Because if the Templars learned the truth, they would fight, and France would burn. Philip stood at the edge of history. One move left. Erase the debt. Seize the wealth. Destroy the untouchable. He didn't hesitate. He signed the orders. And with one stroke of ink, the most powerful men in Europe were marked for destruction. The charges shocked Europe, not theft, not treason, something worse, heresy, because criminals can be punished, but heretics must be erased. The first accusation cut deepest. New initiates, they said, were forced to deny Christ, not quietly, not symbolically. They were ordered to spit on the cross, to look at the symbol they had sworn to die for, and defile it. Saliva on sacred wood, a test of obedience, a ritual of betrayal. How could soldiers of Christ be accused of this? That was the point. Then came the second charge, more disturbing, more intimate, the osculum infame, the kiss of shame. During initiation, recruits were allegedly commanded to kiss their superior, not on the cheek, not on the hand, but on the navel, at the base of the spine, and finally, on the mouth. Slow, deliberate, an act designed not for pleasure, but humiliation, to break the will, to erase dignity, to turn devotion into disgust. The whispers spread fast, too fast. Then came the darkest claim of all, the idol, a mysterious and bearded head. Some called it Baphomet, others whispered Mahomet. They said the Templars worshipped it in secret, that they prayed to it for wealth, for power, for victory, a demon disguised as a god, never seen, never proven. Yet suddenly, everyone believed it existed. None of this was random. Guillaume de Nogaret chose these accusations with surgical precision. He didn't want thieves, he didn't want traitors. He needed monsters, because if the Templars were merely corrupt, the Pope might protect them. But if they were heretics, as Rome would have no choice, these lies attacked everything the Church feared most. Sexual deviance, idolatry, the denial of Christ. They poisoned the imagination. Once planted, they could not be removed. And that is the most terrifying part. Not that people believed the accusations, but how easily they wanted to. Because when fear meets envy, truth becomes irrelevant. The breaking stone walls, no light, no time. The dungeons were not designed to kill, they were designed to break. How do you destroy a man who does not fear death? You don't threaten him with dying. You make him beg to live. The methods were simple, efficient, feet soaked in animal fat, bound tight. Then, fire, slow heat, skin blistering, bones screaming. Not enough to kill, just enough to promise more. Others were taken to the rack, arms tied, legs bound. The wheel turns, a stretch, a scream. Joints pop like dry wood snapping, not all at once, bit by bit, until the body understands. Resistance is pointless. The pain was total, it filled the mouth, the ears, the mind. There was no room left for faith, no space for truth, and that's when the confessions came. They confessed to everything, to spitting on the cross, to obscene kisses, to idols they had never seen. Not because it was true, but because the pain demanded words, any words, to make it stop. The truth died in the first hour. Everything after was just pain speaking. Some recanted later, bravely, desperately. But it didn't matter. Ink dries faster than screams fade. And here is the secret history, the part rarely told. While men were being destroyed in darkness, the Pope investigated, quietly, carefully. He questioned the leaders himself. No torture, no chains, and he reached a conclusion. They were innocent. The absolution was written down, sealed, hidden, a document meant to save the order. But the king moved faster. The parchment disappeared, buried by power, because mercy was inconvenient. The church hesitated, the crown did not, and in that hesitation, the Templars were lost. This was not justice, it was erasure, slow, deliberate, and once the breaking was complete, there was no going back. The redemption in fire 7 years later, Paris, 1314. The bells of Notre Dame loom over the city, like witnesses. A wooden platform stands before the cathedral. This is the end. They are brought out slowly. Two old men, thin, bent, broken by stone and darkness. Jacques de Molay, Geoffroy de Charnay, once feared across continents, now barely standing. The crowd waits. They have heard this before. Confess again and live. Withdraw your words and be spared. That is the deal. Jacques de Molay steps forward. His voice is weak, but steady. And then, everything changes. He does not confess. He denies. He shouts the truth into the cold air. The order is innocent. Every accusation, a lie. He says the only crime he committed was lying before, lying to save his life. And that lie burns his soul. The square freezes. This was not the script. Faces turn, whispers spread. High above, the king watches. Philip does not argue. He does not debate. He erupts. This is rebellion. This is defiance. And it will not be tolerated. The order is given. Immediate execution, no delay, no mercy. Tonight, as the sun falls, the city follows the condemned. Across the river, to a small island, the Ile des Juifs, a place meant to erase men. They are tied to wooden posts, ropes tight around wasted bodies. The king gives one final instruction. Not fast, slow. Let them feel it. The fire is lit. Smoke rises. Flames climb. The heat is unbearable. And yet, they do not scream. They do not beg. They pray. Eyes fixed on Notre Dame. Lips moving silently. The crowd does not cheer. No one laughs. No one speaks. Because something is wrong. Heretics curse God. Martyrs do not. And in that silence, everyone understands. They are not watching criminals die, they are watching truth burn. The curse, the flames rise higher. Jacques de Molay is barely visible now. Smoke wraps around his face, the heat tears at his flesh, but his voice still carries. And in his final moments, he does not scream. He pronounces judgment. He calls out names, not to the crowd, but to history itself. Pope Clement, Knight Guillaume, King Philip, I summon you before the tribunal of God. Within 1 year, the fire consumes him. The words remain. And then, something unsettling happens. 1 month later, Pope Clement V is dead. Sudden illness, agonizing stomach pain. Gone. Before the year ends, King Philip IV follows. A hunting accident, a stroke. No clear answer, only silence. Then, the bloodline begins to rot. Philip's sons take the throne, one by one, and fall. No heirs, no future. Within 14 years, the Capetian dynasty collapses. History gives them a name, the Accursed Kings. Coincidence or consequence, the order is officially dissolved, its lands seized, its symbols erased, but questions refuse to die. Did the Templars truly vanish? Or did they simply adapt? Did their power dissolve and or go underground? Into banks, into institutions, into shadows. Because history is written by those who survive, and secrets belong to those who disappear. Perhaps the greatest trick of the Knights Templar was not their wealth or their armies, but their ability to endure as a mystery. And that mystery still watches us, from behind stone walls, from forgotten symbols, from unanswered questions. If you want to uncover more hidden truths, more buried crimes, more forbidden chapters of history, subscribe. Because some secrets were never meant to stay buried.